a car that promised to destroy Ferrari with aerospace technology, a car that ultimately became both America's greatest supercar achievement and its biggest failure. Our story begins in the late 70s with a man named Gerald Wiegert. Now, Wiegert wasn't your typical car designer. He looked at the American automotive landscape and noticed something shocking. The USA, the country that put a man on the moon, had never built a true supercar. Italy had Lamborghini and Ferrari, but America? Nothing. So Wiegert had an idea. If America couldn't compete with Italian exotics using traditional methods, why not use something America was actually good at, aerospace technology? And in 1977, he built his first prototype. The philosophy was brilliant. Instead of copying Italian designs, Wiegert decided to build a car like an aircraft. The chassis was a semi-space frame, semi-monocoque design made from chrome moly steel tubes and aluminum panels. But here's where it gets wild. These weren't welded together like a normal car, they were bonded with epoxy and rivets, just like a fighter jet. The floor pan, aerospace aluminum honeycomb. The body, carbon fiber, Kevlar, and glass fiber. And the interior, 4 electroluminescent displays straight out of a cockpit. Wiegert wasn't messing around. But the real controversy came from the performance claims. Remember, this was the early 80s. A Lamborghini Countach had around 375 horsepower and was considered the king of supercars. So, what did Wiegert claim for his Vector? Over 600 horsepower. People thought he was insane. The engine sat transversely amidships, not on the rear axle, for perfect balance. It was a V8 with twin turbochargers, which explains the name, Vector W2. W for Wiegert, 2 for the number of turbos, and the top speed claim? Hold on to your seats, 242 miles per hour. In the 1980s, that number was absolutely insane. Many people simply didn't believe it. The styling matched the outrageous performance claims. Low, wide, wedge-shaped with scissor doors, it made even a Countach look conservative. Wiegert was targeting millionaires, and he designed the car to look like nothing else on Earth. And then, nothing happened. Well, not exactly nothing. The Vector became famous, but not for the right reasons. It spent the next 13 years stuck in prototype stage while Wiegert desperately tried to raise money to actually build it. You might have even seen it without knowing. The Vector appeared in various advertisements, including Winston's cigarette commercials. It became this legendary vaporware supercar. Everyone had heard of it, everyone had seen pictures, but nobody could actually buy one. The debates raged on. Was it real? Could it actually hit those speeds? Would it ever be built? Finally, in 1990, after over a decade of waiting, the Vector went into production. The name changed to W8 to represent all 8 cylinders. And the engine? Oh boy, the engine was something special. Wiegert started with a GM small block V8, a 6-liter pushrod design. But calling it a GM engine is like saying a Formula 1 car is just a modified road car. This thing was completely rebuilt with race-prepared aftermarket parts. Aluminum head and block, forged pistons, forged crankshaft, stainless steel connecting rods and valves, a dry sump lubrication system, and of course, those twin Garrett turbochargers with a massive aluminum intercooler. Here's the clever part. The displacement was 6 liters, double that of Ferrari, F40's twin-turbo V8. This meant the turbos could run at relatively low boost pressure while still producing 625 horsepower and 630 pound-feet of torque. The top speed claim was revised down to a more realistic 218 miles per hour. But here's where reality crashed the party. When magazines finally got their hands on a test car, that 218 mile per hour top speed was never verified. The engine struggled to reach its claimed 7,000 RPM redline, not surprising for a pushrod design. Vector claimed the aerodynamic package wasn't ready for top speed runs yet and rejected the attempts. However, acceleration was impressive. Road and Track magazine recorded 0 to 60 miles per hour in 4.2 seconds, with 100 miles per hour arriving in just 8.3 seconds. That matched the Ferrari F40. Not bad for America's first supercar attempt. But now we need to talk about one of the most ridiculous design choices in supercar history. Are you ready for this? The Vector W8 used a 3-speed automatic transmission. Yes, you heard that right. A 3-speed automatic in a 625 horsepower supercar? Why? Because Vector couldn't find a manual transmission that could handle the tremendous torque, so they went with a GM-sourced 3-speed automatic, and the gear ratios were absolutely bonkers. First gear could take you all the way to 70 miles per hour, second gear went to 137 miles per hour, and third gear was responsible for everything from 137 up to that claimed 218 mile per hour top speed. On the plus side, this made the Vector easier to drive than traditional supercars. No clutch, no missed shifts, but there was a massive downside. The transmission often refused to shift into third gear on regular roads, which could be incredibly frustrating. The rear suspension had another controversial feature, a de Dion tube setup. This was essentially a non-independent rear axle, something you'd never expect on a modern sports car, especially not a supercar. While contemporary reviews said the ride was surprisingly supple, that non-independent rear suspension likely hurt handling on demanding roads. But American magazines were generally impressed. The Vector had strong grip, minimal body roll, and good balance. The steering was too light and lacked self-centering, but turn-in was sharp. At the limit, it showed mild understeer, making it relatively safe and predictable. It was actually easy to drive by supercar standards thanks to that automatic transmission, light steering, and a good driving position. Inside, the cabin was much roomier than a Lamborghini. The seats were packed closely together in the middle, so the pedals were only slightly offset. And here's something shocking. The build quality was excellent. Better than its Italian rivals, in fact. The fit and finish was superb, materials were top quality, and it had a built-to-last feel. Owners found it reliable and easy to maintain. But that quality came at a cost, literally. The Vector was extremely expensive to build. In 3 years, Wiegert only built 19 cars, including prototypes. Even though the price climbed to $500,000, each car was still made at a loss. Desperate for funding, Wiegert brought in an Indonesian firm called Megatech as a new shareholder. He started developing a next-generation model called the Avtec WX3 with even wilder claims, 700 horsepower naturally aspirated, or 1200 horsepower with twin turbos. Top speed of 260 miles per hour, 0 to 60 in just 2.6 seconds. Most people didn't believe those numbers either. But before that car could be developed, Megatech kicked out Wiegert and most of the engineers to stop the bleeding. The program had already burned through $50 million. Megatech tried to salvage things by creating the M12, basically a Lamborghini Diablo in Vector clothing. It wasn't a real Vector. Production ended in 1999 after just 17 cars were built. And just like that, the Vector disappeared into history, taking America's first supercar dream with it. A car that promised everything, delivered something remarkable, but ultimately couldn't survive in the brutal world of exotic car manufacturing.